Welcome to the Economies and Neighbourhoods Scrutiny panel that is taking place this afternoon. We will start off by going through the members of the committee. So my name's Harpreet, I'm the chair of the Economies and Neighbourhoods Scrutiny panel. Ailey, do you want to introduce yourself? I think she might be having a few problems with her internet at the moment, so just bear with us. I'll move on to Councillor Hussain.
So it's Councillor Yusra Hussain from Batley West Ward.
Thank you. And Richard, Councillor Eastwood.
All right. Yeah, Councillor Richard Eastwood from Linley Ward.
Thank you. So we are expecting some other panel members to join us, so hopefully they will join soon. We have had apologies from Chris Friend. So does anyone have any interest to declare at this stage? No? Okay, perfect. Panel members, can I ask you just to look through the minutes of the previous meeting and let me know if you're happy to approve those? Yeah, is that okay? Yep, okay, brilliant. So I think a couple of our panel members are just having problems with their IT. So we are quiet at the moment, so we will continue and we'll just keep an eye on the IT situation and whether that might cause issues, but at the moment we're okay to go. So in terms of admissions of the public, this is a public meeting and people can view the meeting online. In terms of public question time, we haven't had any general questions from the general public. Deputations and petitions, we haven't had a specific deputation or petition. We do have John Lewis, the chair of Kirklees cycling campaign, joining us, and he will be inputting into the active travel presentation. So at this stage, what we'll do is we will move on to the active travel presentation. I'm just going to double check. I think Ailey, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Thanks for that.
Perfect. So Ailey's one of our panel members as well. So that's great. So we'll move on to the active travel presentation. I think Tim Lawrence is going to kick that off for us. If Tim is here.
I am indeed. Good afternoon, Chair.
Good afternoon, Tim.
Thank you. I'm just going to share my screen. Go. Can everybody see that? Chair?
We can, yes. We
Great
can.
stuff. Okay. So, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Tim Lawrence. I'm the Transport Strategy and Policy Manager for Kirklees. I'd like to say good afternoon to councillors, panel members, guests and observers. I'd like to introduce this particular item, please, with a short presentation that just highlights some of the elements contained within the report that was distributed with the agenda. The presentation contains nothing new in terms of the information, but it does, I hope, serve to highlight some of the pertinent points that we've tried to raise. So I'd like to just kind of start for 10 minutes, if nothing else, just to re-emphasize or emphasize that we're not starting this process from a blank sheet. And in some respects that's good, because there's a lot of historical information out there, policies and procedures that we've already thought about and looked at within the council. So I thought it'd be useful if we just kind of looked at what those influences are on us at the moment. We already have a Kirklees cycling and walking framework that's been agreed and we're following at the moment. We have a major project section. We have a lot of service activity area provision, and we are doing additional work around active travel. The government is very keen, as part of its refers to as the gear change document, its current policy around cycling, that the authorities engage in the provision or the compilation of local cycling and walking infrastructure plans. And that's an influence on how we move forward in terms of our thinking around about active travel. We're very keen that we integrate, insofar as is possible, active travel into our major scheme designs that we're looking at the moment through the West Yorkshire Transport Fund and through other funding opportunities. We recently have, within the council, as far as officers are concerned, created a transport strategy and policy team, of which I am the manager. We're a very small team at the moment, so resources are quite stretched, as myself and another officer. But we are looking to recruit. We are looking to grow. We see this as a very important part of the agenda moving forward into sustainability and climate change. And we treat this with the importance with which we think it deserves. We're going to talk a little bit about a multidisciplinary approach that we've got here at Kirklees in terms of active travel. And finally, well, a current influence of this, of course, COVID-19. Despite where we are at the moment and what's happened in the past has been very important. People have got out more, they've explored their local area more, they've made use of existing public rights of way. We need to build on that usage in terms of how we take forward an active travel strategy. There's some considerations, of course, that I've alluded to earlier on. We need a more community-led approach. We want to work with partners within the walking and cycling framework, but also promote and produce wider working relationships. We want to look at the expert advice that we can get from charities such as Sustrans, but also more locally based individuals and groups who can input into this process. As a council, we're very keen on promoting place-based working, looking at the opportunities around transforming streets so that they can be used by people, not just cars, where appropriate. As I noted earlier on, it's very important an active travel strategy takes into account the opportunities afforded to us around climate change and also the impact that swapping our mode of transport can have on improved air quality. And of course, they're very cognizant of outcomes for children as well, the necessity to encourage where possible playing in the street and that outdoor activity. So all these things, in addition to the provision of cycling, are the kind of things we're looking towards doing when we're developing and considering how we develop this active travel strategy. I mentioned earlier on the walking and cycling framework. I just thought I'd emphasise that as part of this presentation. You can see how we're trying to bring the individuals together to try and ensure that we're delivering a holistic approach to active travel. I mentioned consultation as well. There are a lot of people who have a valued and valid input into an active travel agenda. And the purpose of this slide is to give you panel members, chair, councillors, that certainty that we are engaging with as many people as possible to help drive that agenda forward and formulate that strategy. We wanted to talk a little bit about how we provide infrastructure within the report, but how we provide infrastructure, of course, within the borough and the types of activities we're undertaking and how we're trying to implement active travel measures into the schemes as we design them. The list there of some of the scheme development that we as officers and councillors are involved in at the moment. This is the scheme list that's taken from Appendix 1 of the report that went out with the agenda. And so if the slide before talked in broad details about the range of the projects, this boils it down to the schemes that we're looking at as part of our programme. And we'll talk a little bit more of that, I guess, in subsequent presentation and perhaps in the question and answer session. We wanted just to kind of give you a flavour, panel members, chair, as to how we integrate active travel into design. You might hear a little bit today about Local Transport Note 120, which is the government's guidance on how authorities provide a much more improved facility for cyclists and walkers within the local environment and the schemes that they are promoting. I don't think we're in any doubt as to the benefits of active travel and the promotion of good health, the improvement of the quality of life, but also that active travel within schemes can improve accessibility for all and the efficiency of the transport network on a district-wide level. At a purely design level, when we think about actually what we're going to put on the ground, we want to design places that provide enjoyment, comfort and protection, that we work in partnership with communities. And I think we're very keen now as we promote this strategy and the schemes within this strategy that they are designed in partnership with the local residents, but that they're context specific. So it's the old phrase, horses for courses, that they're evidence led. And where we can, we want to develop these schemes that separate people walking and cycling from their private motor vehicles where we have that opportunity. And that this slide here just kind of goes in a little bit more detail of what separation means, off carriageway infrastructure, if necessary and if appropriate, through the reallocation of road space. We could have shared use off carriageway infrastructure. That's something in Kirklees that we've been very keen to promote over the last 10 to 15 years. I know that councillors will remember a lot of the Greenway products that we've provided in the past. Greenway being that off carriageway infrastructure that's shared for use by cyclists and walkers. Where we can, we want to improve on-road conditions to encourage an increase in cycle use within the existing highway as well. The promotion of any active travel strategy isn't just around about hard engineering products. There are what we call softer measures in terms of setting strategies, working with people to change their behaviour. We're looking at e-bikes and e-scooters. We've got a fleet of 4 e-bikes at the moment that we can use and we can lend out to individuals to undertake site visits or to go about council business. And we're looking at partnership arrangements with other organisations as well to make best use of this fleet. In terms of the next steps, what we'd like to try and do is coordinate. And when I say we, I mean the transport strategy and policy as the figurehead for moving this forward in terms of the officer agenda. We want to coordinate that active travel agenda across all policy and decision making. We want to work with community and interest groups around developing an active travel strategy. And we start that with the Kirklees Cycle Forum in December 2020 and ongoing. We want to complete and roll out this new robust active travel strategy. This meeting perhaps could be viewed as the genesis of that, or the rebirth, if you like, of that. It has happened before. We have had committed officers promoting active travel, and we still do within the council. But now it's about taking it one stage further in line with those government ambitions and the council ambitions as well. We want to progress these local cycling and walking implementation plans to the next stage. We already have one. It's about now developing the schemes from that and developing more local cycling and walking implementation plans. They are the preferred government methodology at the moment for making sure schemes come to fruition on the ground. We want to build on our approach to dealing with planning applications. We're very keen to ensure that where developer contributions can be sourced, that they are directed towards the provision of active travel modes, so that when people move into the area, there are opportunities for them to commute, to partake in leisure activities and to explore their local area. Everything we do, we need to measure that success somehow. Whether it's in the form of the engagement and the communication from the public, but also in terms of the total increase in cyclists and people walking across the borough. I think, as I've tried to emphasise throughout this project, it's important to note that there's already a lot of good work ongoing within the council, with partners and within the community. The development of this active travel strategy is not taking place on a blank sheet of paper, and we're really grateful for the comments we've received so far as part of this presentation, that there is an historical perspective, there has been work undertaken, there are still elements that we need to look at that have been brought to our attention recently, and we need to reintroduce them back into any forward-thinking strategy. And that's just a final word. It's about joining this good work together, understanding this holistic approach on the economy and the health and well-being of Kirklees residents, and proactively facilitating and encouraging this change through the active strategy where applicable. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Tim. That's really helpful. I'm going to bring in John Lewis at this stage, who's the chair of the Kirklees cycling campaign, so he can input into this item. So, John, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Yeah.
Perfect. So you've got up to 5 minutes, so you can input into this item. Off you go, John.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Chair, for permitting me to speak to you all. I've also inputted some slides, not to the extent of Tim has, but you'll see from both Tim and myself that we do actually share large areas of common ground. However, it is also the case that Kirklees Cycling Campaign and Kirklees Council seem to be looking at active travel through opposite ends of the telescope a bit. And Tim's account seems to indicate that everything's fine and under control. Whilst my 3 slides that I sent you together with the notes suggest that there are challenges and they have to be fully understood and committed to by the council. I've got very limited time, so I'm only going to mention 2 areas that I consider quite important. One is the stakeholder involvement, and 2 are what I call connections. Stakeholder involvement is considered fundamental in the DFT's gear change documents that Tim mentioned. And Tim's review seems to indicate that stakeholders in Kirklees participate and are engaged in planning and development of active travel. But I'm afraid to say this is not so far the experience of Kirklees Cycling Campaign. The past few years have been littered with unfulfilled promises, and every single proposal that the campaign group has put to the council has been ignored. We're currently pending a promise of a new cycle forum, and one can only hope that this is the beginning of a new chapter. But I can't help being a little bit cynical because we have so much experience of failed proposals in the past. So let's keep our fingers crossed, and please, will members bear in mind that this cycle forum and the strategy, active travel strategy, has really got to work. There's got to be a real go on to connections. Clearly at the proposals in Appendix 1 of Tim's document, because they're all very different. For example, the major transport projects, they prioritise motor transport, and they only include cycling and walking where it doesn't interfere with the principal objective. And this seriously compromises the active travel element. I'll take one example. The Southern Gateway scheme aims to get more traffic through Longroyd Bridge without waiting at the traffic lights longer than necessary. But it doesn't make any attempt to make a cycle route linking Longroyd Bridge to Huddersfield Town Centre. That's the Southern Gateway. There is absolutely no point in spending millions of pounds on a cycle route from Slathwaite to Longroyd Bridge along the canal if it doesn't link up with Huddersfield Town Centre. There's a broken link there. And it's not the way to encourage people to use a bike to get to the station, to get to work or to the shops. And that's only one example. You'll find many more on slide 2, as well as in Huddersfield Town Centre and Dewsbury. So I'd like to make a public request that Kirklees makes it a priority to design and construct these connections, the places where links need to be made. Without doing this, we can't begin to have a functioning cycle network in Kirklees that encourages more people to use a bike and a means of transport. How was that for time?
That was impeccable, John. Thank you very much. That was really helpful. Thank you so much for inputting into the item. And there's a number of suggestions that you put forward that you know, we all need to consider. So thank you for that. And hopefully some of those will be picked up as we go into the question and answer session now. So thank you very much. I'm going to ask members to use the raised hands function if they want to speak. I think we already had one from Councillor Bolt, but please use the raise hands function going forward. So Councillor Bolt, do you want to kick off?
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks to John for that, and thanks to Kyle Payne for his assistance in getting me here. Hard luck, Harpreet, I made it. I think John quite rightly said that not only, I'd go a bit stronger, not only is it unfulfilled promises, but Kirklees has reneged on previous agreements. As part of the preparation for this meeting, I was looking back through some papers which I've kept. Colne Valley Greenway route selection, November 2004. That actually said that the first section from Longroyd Bridge to Milnes Bridge would take into place and link with Paddock, George Street and various other businesses. And I've got the draft agreement that was in place that we worked with councils for that. That would have been an inclusive section. The canal towpath, the people who live at the side of it can't even get on the greenway. Hopefully colleagues will have got the files which, I sent. Kirklees Green Network, 2006, setting out both existing and aspirational network and ways that they were going to be achieved. The paper that we've got actually misses out a couple of bits. That the Spen Valley Ringway, one of the early schemes, which is still waiting linking and completion, in on page 11, 2.43. That was developed as a safe route to school and also linking Heckmondwike through towards Cleckheaton. It talks about, again on the same item, the Calder Valley Greenway Murfield extension. That is incorrect, Tim. It's the completion of the Calder Valley Greenway, because again, picking up on the unfulfilled promises or reneging, Kirklees made a deliberate choice to take funding away from the Calder Valley Greenway at Murfield. Richard Hadfield and David Sheard attended a meeting in Murfield and said, we're going to take the money from this and spend it in Dewsbury. And hence we now have the Calder Valley Greenway at Murfield, which features in national reports by Sustrans and others as the missed opportunity. So that needs to be corrected. Spen Valley Sports College, it says in the same item, a link to the Greenway. 31st of October 2007, Spen Valley Sports College, safe route to school path. Land that Kirklees owned was going to be used to link from the Greenway. That never happened. So let's look at this. And when staff say, yes, we're going to do something, and it runs from one side of the borough to the other. Ironically, I've had contact only this week from industrialists who are upset about a problem on the Tandem Industrial Estate. He says, we last met when we were talking about opening up a greenway through Tandem Industrial Estate through Morrison's. Again, that never came to fruition. Tim has talked about working with planning and getting contributions from developers. All very welcome, Chair. But firstly, Kirklees has to set the example that when it gets planning permission 2003-95052, development of the Calder Valley Greenway, if I could share my screen, I'll be able to show you the approved drawings, which say on the section in Dalton Ward, from Helm Lane through to Bog Green Lane, the hard surface should also have an equestrian surface at the side of it, which gives a greater greenway use, but also keeps leaves and things off. That's never been built. The Calder Valley Greenway has a condition 8, that an annual usage survey and a review of road safety takes place. That's not being done. So whilst we welcome developer contributions, let's make sure that Kirklees gets its own act in order. We can't be taking enforcement against businesses and private individuals if things being developed by Kirklees are not delivered according to what was said. Let's also learn that we shouldn't be repeating mistakes. it's bad enough to make a mistake, anybody does, but when they keep repeating them, like the development of the Birkby Bradley Greenway, which I think John mentions in his papers. John mentions that there's a section of route that is substandard, Red Doors Lane to Willow Lane. Well, actually, the Birkby Bradley Greenway was designed and built by Kirklees Highways as a standalone scheme, and was, I believe, the only one in the borough which is adopted highway. So all the maintenance of that has the same priority criteria and everything as the road on which a car goes. So that's not a greenway as such, that is a highway. It did have problems on it. And when Kirklees was assessed by Cycling England, that was one of the things that was mentioned in 2003, that there were barriers, wooden barriers on that route. So why are they still being put in place on the Batley Greenway, which is missing off some of the maps and has been highlighted by users that obstructive bollards mean that a person who is taking his child to school on a tandem has to get off, leaving the child exposed on the road. Nearly 20 years later, Kirklees are still repeating the mistakes. So we've got to learn, and we've got to be part of the West Yorkshire strategy. And I think, again, this item should also have the targets of what we're aiming for. What are the West Yorkshire strategies that Kirklees has signed up to in terms of modal shift? We've got to have that at the forefront. And also, what are our current usage figures? Because unlike some figures that have been bandied about in response to questions at Council and Cabinet, it is not 0.01% of the population in Kirklees who cycle. According to the year-on-year figures for the last 3 years, the average of our population who cycle once a month is 10%. That's 44,000 people cycle once a month, Chair. That's quite a significant number, and is also 1,000 times greater than the figure that was being bandied about. We had also a scrutiny review in 2001, 2002.
Martin, I need to bring in other members as well, so just be mindful of time.
Yes, but yeah, we had at Council, we were asked, it's okay having scrutiny reviews such as we're doing, and the recommendations are accepted, but they're never implemented. We've got papers here which we've been doing. So yeah, if you forgive the pun, we are forever reinventing the wheel on this and wasting time and money instead of making progress, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Boughton. It's always great to have you here. So I was happy you were able to join. Okay. Tim, do you want to come back on that?
Thank you, Chair. So on behalf of the Council officers, I'd like to thank Councillor Bolt and Mr Lewis for reinforcing the need to consider the specific elements they've highlighted as part of the cycle provision element of the active travel strategy. I made mention, I think twice in the presentation, that we're not starting from a blank sheet of paper. And I think as officers, it's really useful that we have this depth, breadth and historical knowledge that we can take forward and start to address some of these concerns that have been raised in the meeting. I think it's useful, and I think officers will agree, it's useful that this is being recorded because we get a chance to go back through it now and have a look at all these issues and list them and start to prioritise them and start to address them within the active travel strategy. It is not the forum here to go through every single point that Councillor Bolt has raised, but suffice to say that Mr Lewis's cynicism or pessimism even, and I hope this will be a little bit of a fresh start and we can build on the good work that both he and I have done together in terms of discussing how we might move forward in terms of cycling provision in the future.
Okay, thank you, Tim. I've got Ailey and then I've got Andrew.
Hello, I would just like to thank Tim and John for their presentations and say that I'd like to agree with John's points about connectivity and severance. I think the prioritisation of cars is something that, whilst car travel is important, obviously, then it needs to be considered as part of the whole picture, and to try and get the balance right. So I think it's important to think about greenways, for example. Having separate travel or separate and safe places for cycling is important. But for example, if you look at the greenway going to Murfield, it's extremely busy, but then the cyclists just disappear at a certain point, and I think that point is on the edge of Huddersfield, because there's so much severance. So essentially cycling seems to be more seen as a leisure pursuit because of this, and yeah, not having on-road solutions and good connectivity means that, yeah, it's very much seen separately. So I would very much like to see more on-road solutions connecting the centre of Huddersfield. This would help normalise cycling and increase cycling visibility. I think certainly online, it seems that cyclists in Huddersfield might be rarer than unicorns, which I disagree with, but I think a lot of that is because people are, well, partly not coming in, but also just the sort of greenways and severance. I think the routes aren't necessarily visible or connected. So I think having visible cyclist routes would encourage safer journeys and also facilitate the routes that people need to travel, rather than cycling just being a leisure activity. I think I'd also like to say about both cycling and walking, any strategy, I'd really like to hear more about the maintenance and how that will be considered going forward. Because I think it's something I've mentioned on this panel before, that to walk into the centre of Huddersfield from where I live, for example, it's not a very pleasant walk. The pavements are not just full of litter, but they're all boggy and muddy, and there's drains overflowing and things. So I think this needs to be considered. I mean, it's kind of not surprising why people don't consider it as an option when it's not particularly pleasant. I think my third point is around consultation. We did hear from and I think certainly in the paper it talks about the Your Voice interactive map, which I've seen and I thought was great. But in general, I would like to hear more of an understanding about what the barriers are for non-cyclists. So I think this interactive map and many of these groups and forums that are being consulted with, these are people who already cycle and have an interest in this. So I'd really like the strategy to ensure that the strategy considers what would get people who don't cycle to start cycling. And just, yeah, essentially making sure it's not just about existing users and really bringing new people and identifying what the barriers are for them. Thank you.
Thanks, Ailey. That was really helpful. Tim, do you want to come back on that?
I'll just come back briefly, if I may, Chair.
Yes, of course.
Thank you. A really useful summary there. And I think it's going to be quite simple to boil down some key messages from this meeting to take away. I'm getting connectivity, I'm getting maintenance, and I'm getting consultation. Now, within there are a number of different issues that we need to address, but it's quite clear to me that plugging those gaps, getting people onto the network, those that haven't cycled before, and finding a way to engage with them are key things that we're going to take away. So thank you. Really useful information.
Great. Thank you, Tim. Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. Really fascinating today that we've got this presentation and the presentation about air pollution and on the same agenda, because there's a clear interaction between these two. I really want to focus a little bit less on the hardware, which I know is important. Hardware, I mean the roads and the pavements and everything, and a little bit more about some of the things at the ends of the journey, particularly the destination. I don't know whether Kirklees is using its powers in planning to require employers to have sufficient secure parking for bikes, and also accommodation for changing and storing clothes for cycling. Now, if you're going to have people cycling to work, I think you need to make sure that where they arrive is a suitable, provides suitable support. And that really goes for leisure facilities and venues as well. If you're going to cycle into something, cycle into the theatre, cycle into the cinema when they reopen, fingers crossed, they need to be able to get off the bike and not then have to sit in the stalls in wet cycling gear. So I think there's also the whole thing about behaviour change. School travel, a lot of the school travel we've got going on with cars is because people are concerned safety for their kids, and also because they're doing it as part of their commute to work. So encouraging children to walk independently, other ways of getting, this relates to neighbourhood schooling as well. There's a whole sort of soft skills, behavioural change agenda to this as well, which we seem to keep focusing on the greenways and the roads and the security of the safety people feel with curbs and things. And I agree that's all necessary, but I think there needs to be a balance to provide hardware at the end points of travel and also support for behavioural change, starting with young people and starting with schools.
Thank you, Andrew. Tim?
Thank you, Mr. Budd. Again, really useful comments. I won't patronise you by saying I agree wholeheartedly, but what I'd like to say perhaps is that within the very small team that we've got at the moment, we do have an individual who is extremely keen on these softer measures, the end of journey type infrastructure that you were talking about there. And it's really useful for me as a practitioner involved in major projects to have that counterpoint and to hear it from you as well. I hope there is you can take some solace from the presentation that we gave, that we are looking more at these softer measures. We're starting to engage with a lot of employers within Huddersfield Town Centre and Dewsbury Town Centre. We've got the West Yorkshire Travel Plan Network, which my colleague is linked into, and we're now starting to increase the frequency and the level of our engagement to try and work out how we can best work together to provide these type of facilities. A lot of it in terms of the private sector is, of course, at the behest of the private sector and the levels of investment that they want to provide within the curtilage of their own properties. But if we can give them sufficient evidence that gives them surety that the benefits of cycling to work or to cycling to their the destination are such that they should invest in it, then I think it's something that we're going to that we should promote and that we're going to promote through the active travel strategy. In addition, we're also looking to adopt the mode shift stars for businesses in the new calendar year as well. So that gives business something that they can promote within their own community as a sustainable business that is championing active travel, and that looks good from their own perspective. So yes, it's something we're keen to increase more of our influence on. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Are there any final questions before we move on to the next agenda item? No, Martin?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. In taking something positive away, I believe Kirklees still has a statutory role as a road safety authority, Tim. What are you doing with regards to promoting safety on the road? Issues like the Close Pass initiative, which has been promoted very well around the country. Neighbouring authorities use material from the DFT's Think campaign, which highlights issues about why cyclists adopt a road positioning, because things have moved on a lot since cycling proficiency that some of us did. We're now on to bikeability level 3, which dictates and suggests safe areas of cycling. And if the motorists don't know that, that's why there is some animosity towards vulnerable road users, because drivers think cyclists are being awkward, and in actual fact, they are obeying what they are taught by DFT and our own cycling instructors. So what's happening with regards to road safety, Tim?
Thanks, Councillor Bolt. as you hopefully saw within the meat of the presentation and within the report that we wrote, the promotion of active travel doesn't just rest on my shoulders. I am, of course, the figurehead for that for the council, and I'm grateful I've been given that opportunity. But we are liaising with a lot of other parts of the council around specific issues and the promotion of any initiatives that are currently ongoing. And what I'd say to you there is that this is an opportunity for growth. We're in regular contact. Our colleagues in highway safety are in regular contact with the police, fire and schools around how we can improve cycling proficiency or bikeability as it is now. So yeah, it's something that I'm keen to promote further, and it's something that as part of the active travel strategy we'll be looking at colleagues in highways to assist us with. But I think it's a really good point around how you feel as a cyclist on the road. Not necessarily you, Councillor, but you know, those that are perhaps less confident or are trying it out for the first time. It is daunting. We need to build that in to our education of the population moving forward.
Thank you, Tim. That's helpful. So if there's no more questions, we'll. No, I don't think they are. Well, thank you, Tim, for the presentation. Thank you, John, also for joining us, and thanks to panel members. I think they've made some very good, reasonable, practical points as well. As you agree there, Tim. So we've got the priorities. I can't speak. Sorry. 8 months of staying at home, I've forgotten how to speak. So the balance between cars and cycling and walking and making sure that we're constantly looking at that connectivity. Also making sure that we've got separate and safe ways for cycling, particularly around the greenways. Making sure that we're not just looking at active travel as just a leisure pursuit, but also about for travel to work. We've got engagement, so doing some of that wider engagement with the public, and particularly those that aren't so proficient on cycling like myself. So perhaps we can get a little bit better. Behaviour change, Andrew made some good points there, and also looking at our planning powers as well, which I know there is some work going on that. The only other thing I wanted to mention was the low traffic neighbourhoods, and I know you're looking at an area in Huddersfield, possibly a particular area in Huddersfield. And I think John just made a good point about making sure that we bring the community on board. There's obviously examples across the country, and I think it is a good thing to do, but sometimes it can cause a lot of friction, can't it? Yes. Within those local neighbourhoods, and it's making sure that we bring people along with us really when we're doing that work. So I definitely want to see more of it, but not everyone's in my position really. So I just wanted to make that point, Tim. But thank you so much for joining us, and again, as I've been saying to everybody, thanks for everything that you and your team have been doing at this incredibly pressured time, really, where we've all had to adapt how we work. So thanks for that.
Lovely. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. Thanks for your contributions.
Yeah, nice to see you. Thank you.
Thank you all. Goodbye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you, Pretty. Harpreet.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, John. It was really nice to have you.
Sorry,
join
Chair,
us.
should we have some feedback before John goes from cabinet members about his presentation and what? Obviously, we're grateful to Tim for his, but we want to. The crucial thing is when's it going to cabinet? What do cabinet members think, and are they like their West Yorkshire counterparts going to put their weight behind it? Thanks.
I'm happy to hear from cabinet members. Does any of the cabinet members want to say anything at this stage? Hiya, Paul.
I got in first before Councillor made that. No, I'll be very brief. Really very interesting for me as Councillor Boat. Set my second week into my cabinet role, but clearly, very aware that active travel is central to many of my areas, particularly around climate change. So really useful. I think the feedback, certainly for me, around consultation is crucial, and Tim's taking that on board. So that's certainly something I'll be picking up as well in joint discussions with Councillor Mather and with my team as well in terms of climate change. I think that's certainly extremely important, and that we take people with us, and the right people as well, because what we need to make sure is we're talking to the right people, and I can sense that the huge frustration around this issue of connections. So those for me are two real key areas that we need to be looking at. It is one of those areas which sort of sits across both my portfolio and Councillor Mather, and we will definitely be discussing that and looking at how we can assist in moving that forward. And I'm really glad, Councillor Uppal, that we had somebody from the public member from our area coming in and talking to us. I think that's always the most powerful thing, because sometimes we can quite often getting a little bit of a bubble ourselves, and to hear that voice of the public really is crucial. So that more than that at this point, I can't really add more than that, but certainly we'll be working on this with Councillor Mather.
Thank you, Paul. That's helpful. Peter, did you want to say anything?
No, I just endorse the comments of my colleagues, and particularly the points Tim's made. Tim's trying to indicate the range of activities that we're currently undertaking and will in the future, and we'll take every opportunity to exploit possibilities of resources which might be available to us. But one's got to bear in mind that the resources often for this area are quite limited. So we really have got to look for opportunities, which I think Tim has most effectively over a number of years. So one, I congratulate him on what he's achieved, and also look forward to future achievements.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Councillor McBride. Thanks for that. I'm going to move on to the next item now, because we have got another couple of items, if that's okay. So just for anyone that might be watching, I know we get very good ratings on this panel, so we are having a few perhaps digital problems sometimes with sound, and a couple of our members were a little bit late on because of connectivity. So, but our superb colleagues in IT are doing a fantastic job to keep us going. So if you are noticing a few issues, it's just we're trying our best. So just bear with us. Right then, so we're going to move on to air quality, and I'm going to bring in Sean Berry. Sean, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So you can, it's your floor, so you can go ahead.
I'll start sharing my screen.
Thank you.
I'll also hand over to Wendy as well initially.
Perfect.
Afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for the opportunity to come back to update scrutiny in relation to air quality. My first point to say is we've not achieved everything I would have hoped to have done since I last spoke to you. Certainly around our work with schools, but to put it in a little bit of context, as you can imagine, public protection as a service has been at the forefront of dealing with the pandemic. And so that's taken up quite an awful lot of time, and the schools had quite a lot on dealing with homeschooling and then getting everybody back in a COVID secure world. I had to take a few of the people that were dealing with air quality off their work to help out with the pandemic. So a couple have been trained up to deal with the issues and supporting the temporary mortuary, should ever that be used, and several have been working with businesses and hospitality and COVID secure measures and helping with that. So that's a bit of an apology before we start, but hopefully you will see that we've moved on quite a few of the things, and we'll give you a general update as to where we are with the air quality progress, an update about the annual status report, and the ongoing and future air quality project delivery, and then a little bit of an update as to how lockdown impacted on air quality, and then a fuller update on where we are with next steps. But one of the real positives is that we have a new operational manager. You briefly heard him, Sean Berry, who joined the authority just 5 weeks ago. He's made significant progress as Sean. He's got endless energy and enthusiasm for this topic. So hopefully you will hear from him where we are in relation to air quality. You'll tell from his accent he's not from Yorkshire, but he's moving his family up to live in Mirfield in the new year. So on that, I'll hand over to Sean, who'll go into detail, and then we'll be able to answer any questions at the end. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Wendy. Thank you, Chair. As a largely urban district with several towns and villages bordering larger populated areas, the air quality across Kirklees is generally good. That is, if we consider national trends or if we compare ourselves with other neighbouring local authorities. There are, however, air pollution hotspots in Kirklees where the primary pollutants, nitrogen dioxide associated with vehicle emissions, or particulate matter from brake and tyre dust or exhaust soot, can often be higher, and where it has been necessary to declare air quality management areas or AQMAs. AQMAs are typically areas where houses are close to busy roads and pollution can be worsened by problems with congestion. And Kirklees currently has 10 AQMAs within the district, but this is soon to be reduced to 9. Kirklees Council conducts targeted monitoring across the district in locations where residential accommodation is close to busy roads to check levels against the national air quality objective. The current air quality objective set nationally for nitrogen dioxide is 40 micrograms per cubic meter, and that's set by DEFRA as an annual mean. And we report out on our air quality monitoring against this objective to DEFRA every year as part of our annual status report, or ASR. So the annual status report provides an overview of air quality monitoring throughout Kirklees. The ASR takes a retrospective look at monitoring between January 2019 and December 2019. And within the ASR, we report on air quality monitoring at 2 automatic monitoring stations and 87 curbside diffusion tube locations. Historically, monitoring locations were identified and chosen as a result of extensive air quality modelling across Kirklees. Ongoing monitoring location choices are now chosen to enable the team to gather data at locations close to motorway influenced roads, A roads, or key commuter roads prone to queuing with residential receptors adjacent. We also install additional monitoring in response to council inquiries or concerns and have some additional capacity to install up to 100 diffusion tubes. We have also introduced 5 additional air quality sensors, or Zephyr sensors, as you can see in the image here, which are a low-cost compact sensor which use solar power to operate. The Zephyr sensors are capable of measuring multiple emission types and are highly mobile. We had planned to use these new sensors around schools in 2020, but due to COVID and school closures, they were deployed temporarily at other strategic locations instead. So to give some visual representation of the equipment we use, the image on the left is an example of an automatic monitoring station, which we have located at Ainley Top and Bradley. We also have 87 of these diffusion tubes, and these diffusion tubes are a low-cost method of monitoring, which are collected by officers manually every month and sent to a laboratory. They're basically installed on suitably street-placed furniture or outside buildings, and you may spot them on a lamppost if you can spot that in that image there. So the table shown lists AQMAs across Kirklees. What you will see on the right are the nitrogen dioxide levels at declaration in the dates of declaration, and the air quality concentrations at now in 2019. As you'll note from that table, a notable reduction has taken place in AQMA 1, which is Bradley, where air quality levels have fallen from the initially recorded level of 73 micrograms to 38 micrograms, which is an exceptional reduction. This is attributed to award-winning intelligent traffic light phasing improvements by Highways colleagues, which we are rolling out in other areas. AQMAs shown with an asterisk indicate AQMAs which have levels beneath the air quality objective. Although these are now beneath the objective, we are not in a position to revoke these AQMAs just yet. To do so, we need to see the objective being met for 3 consecutive years. In AQMA 2, we previously had issues with particulate matter exceedances. However, these are now compliant and we can now begin the process of revoking that AQMA. We are continuing to undertake monitoring in this area, but are happy to be in a position to revoke the AQMA. AQMA 5 in Eastborough is where we are still seeing an exceedance. Because of this, we are finalising a project to install a pollution barrier or green screen at this location. AQMA results shown in bold show exceedances before distance correction, and results shown in bold and underline indicate exceedances after applying distance correction. These are the exceedances I'll explain in the next slide. So AQ monitoring data reported in our ASR was submitted to DEFRA and has successfully been ratified. As several monitoring locations are next to roads, DEFRA require us to apply a distance correction to the results of these locations to understand the impact of the facade of a residential property. This factors in the reality that pollution concentrations emitted at a vehicle tailpipe reduce with distance, and levels are then assessed for residential exposure at the facade. With this in mind, we reported there were 6 monitoring locations which indicated an exceedance of the objective before correction. After adjustment and distance corrections were applied, it was reported that 5 monitoring locations exceeded the objective. 4 of these were within existing AQMAs. Within the 4 existing AQMAs, we accept more work is needed, which is why we are delivering planned air quality improvement projects and are continuing to conduct air quality monitoring in these areas. We also identified that 2 areas had increases in concentrations. 1 location in Murfield, which did not exceed the objective, and 1 at Milnesbridge, which unfortunately did exceed the objective. In response to these increases, we have installed additional monitoring, which will help us to understand if these results were outliers or if they are in fact a trend which will require targeted intervention in the future. So since the adoption of the Air Quality Action Plan in February 2020, the team have been working exceptionally hard on a number of the air quality projects and actions. The progress made in the last 10 months has been exceptional, considering the small team, the impact COVID has had on the delivery of many projects, and the voluntary roles many of them have taken on for the pandemic response. Some headlines include the creation of a standalone air quality team to deliver the program of works and projects contained within the action plan. Recognition of the link between air quality and climate change through the provision of a combined air quality and climate change service area, which will now enable us to work collaboratively on clean and green projects to address climate change, carbon reductions, and air quality. I'll be the operational manager for that area. A West Yorkshire regional officer has also been appointed to help deliver regional projects and increase partnership working with neighbouring authorities and to update the West Yorkshire low emission strategy. We are also continuing to work with other lead service areas on holistic approaches which contribute towards improving air quality, and the team also regularly attend partnership meetings to share best practice. Being new to the authority, I'm keen to have more conversations with colleagues and partners who are doing excellent work, and I look forward to being in a position to drive forward new projects and new ideas to improve air quality. Throughout 2020, the team have also continued to progress several other strategic air quality projects. I'd like to take the opportunity to recognise the challenge the team have faced with pandemic work alongside air quality project delivery and the results they've delivered so far. Some ongoing projects include the installation of the proposed installation of up to 21 taxi and general EV chargers across 17 sites in partnership with West Yorkshire colleagues. This is in addition to the previously installed 17 chargers at 15 sites, including hotels and hospitals. We also are progressing the procurement of a network of 20 fast and 20 rapid electric vehicle charge points across Kirklees. This will be broken down into 2 phases. Phase 1 will ensure delivery of charge points by March or April next year, or next financial year, before the end of financial. And Phase 2 will deliver the remaining charge points to complete the £1 million capital infrastructure project. All of this is alongside the £1 million allocated to convert council fleet from diesel and petrol to electric equivalents. We are also exploring the use of intelligent traffic management systems across other AQMAs to build on earlier successes. And we're also commencing the delivery of Birkenshaw roundabout alterations with highways colleagues to improve traffic flow and air quality. We are actively developing a project which would help encourage staff to convert their personal vehicles from petrol and diesel to electric equivalents through an affordable salary sacrifice scheme. And we were also preparing a £1.5 million bid from Highways England to offer an EV try before you buy scheme with taxi drivers and white van man delivery drivers. But disappointingly, this funding was withdrawn. But we will continue to look for other funding sources to help deliver this project, which we feel will be a proactive way to encourage the switch to electric vehicle. Okay, so the images shown just give you a few images of the current or future projects we are progressing. The two images in the bottom just give you an idea of the future with the expected shift from traditional petrol filling stations toward EV hubs or large services for EV charging. It's quite an exciting. This has recently opened. Okay, so COVID-19 lockdowns and restrictions have resulted in many residents choosing to work from home and use their vehicles less. Within Kirklees, we have seen improvements in air quality as a result, with a significant drop in average daily air quality concentrations. Using Leeds Road Bradley as a representative example, we can see in the graph that average daily air quality concentrations dropped significantly once lockdown 1 commenced, the blue being normal air quality concentrations before, and red showing concentrations after the first week of lockdown commenced. The full benefits of COVID on air quality in Kirklees will not be seen until the next annual status report, but reductions in transport use and air quality was generally widely reported in many areas nationally. And we see that in the DEFRA slide from BBC, where from commencement of lockdown, air quality levels drastically dropped compared to 2019 levels. So the next steps, moving forward, our priority in 2021 is to continue with the measures already underway and to start work on new projects. We're also looking to ensure we continue to consider holistic approaches to tackle air quality, to continue to work with other services, and to commence some education and awareness campaigns. Some key projects moving forward will be to apply for new air quality grant funding, progress the staff EV salary sacrifice scheme, finalise procurement of EV public charging infrastructure, developing a new public-facing and interactive air quality monitoring website, developing and commencing school engagement education projects, reviewing feasibility of trialling e-bikes or e-scooters in some areas alongside colleagues like Tim in Active Travel, and developing an anti-idling awareness or air quality education campaign. So that is it from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sean. So I'll go to members first. I keep putting my own hand up, sorry about that. We'll just go and see who's got their hands up. So just bear with me. Councillor Bolt, do you want to start?
You put your hand up if you want, you're the chair.
I keep going to that rather than going to the participant list by accident. So we'll start with Councillor Bolt and then we've got Councillor Eastwood.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks, Sean, for that. I mean, I suppose the first question, Sean, would have to be, why would anybody move from Australia, although you have mitigated that by moving into Murfield? Yeah, the green screens at Eastborough, I think, will be interesting. That's something that was raised in council some time ago, because if I recall, the Eastborough, or one of the Eastborough sites, is the virtually at the junction of the Leeds Road and Wakefield corridor towards the Ring Road, so a very, very busy site, and in a dip as well. I'd be interested to discuss with you further the data and trends when Murfield's rising, because again, that's a concern. As you may have heard on the earlier presentation, we're looking at active travel. Obviously, the more we can do to encourage either active travel on safe, well-maintained greenways, which support commuting so people can get to work, college or wherever at a reasonable speed, which sometimes the canal towpaths don't allow us, must take people out of vehicles, and that's linked to education. If we, as they've done on some corridors, if you, on the Leeds Road corridor going into Huddersfield, if it said you are only 5 minutes from Huddersfield by cycle, people might be tempted to forgo a car journey once a week or something. We also need more efficient public transport, which at the moment the bus operators don't seem to be putting buses on routes to encourage people to get out of cars, like the main commuter route from Leeds to Huddersfield and vice versa. You know, you're not going to leave your car at home if the journey on a bus, it takes longer than you can do on your push bike. Have we got any facilities as well? Are we progressing, talking about charging of electric vehicles? There's progress being made on that, although some of the locations where I've seen taxi charging points, there isn't actually a taxi rank near there. The one that we had a picture of, Councillor Mather, down by Aldgate House, where there was actually a ban in the taxi charge. Yeah, there, Murfield and other places, there are not taxi ranks there. So it makes you wonder how effective these reserved spaces are. It means that other electric vehicles can't use them. And a bugbear as well is that as we are encouraging more active travel, we need to be looking at charging points for electric bikes. It's a growing market, and I know you said we've got a small number on trial, but if you commute or ride with an e-bike and get to your destination, you've got to carry your own charger at the moment to replenish your battery for the journey home. So I think both through WICA and through the industry, we need to be getting e-bike charging looked at in the same way as electric vehicles. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Just a reminder to everyone, please mute yourself when you're not speaking, just because we can hear background noise. So, Sean, do you want to come back on that?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Bolt. The green screen, it will be, or pollution barrier, if you want to call it that, will be an interesting project. We are looking at the best practice for green screens, and there's an ongoing project to identify which is the best solution to add into that pollution barrier, not just installing a wall. It's what measures can be used. So it's a twofold project there. I'm more than happy to have a conversation with you about Murfield trends and look at that information, of course, by all means. And I understand the team may have contacted you when they identified that increase, and so that ongoing engagement, I'm more than happy to continue. I appreciate active travel and linking positive work that the active travel team are doing with improvements to air quality will be essential, and I recognise that important link. We know that switching to electric and increasing the uptake of cycling and offering trials toward scooters or other forms of low impact solutions to commute to A to B is something that we're definitely looking at, and I'm more than happy to work with Tim on his active travel plans and how that could help us to improve the air quality across some of our AQMAs and just generally. You talked about EV charging facilities and taxi ranks. I'm more than happy to have a look at that, and I understand that they may be labelled as taxi charging, but I understand the public can also use them. If they're purely dedicated taxis, then I'll have a look at that, and I'm more than happy to take that away. And as part of my market testing and supplier engagement, I will ask them about cycling charging and whether or not there's capacity to add in an additional cable or some form of facility to enable and to promote that, if that is possible. Then I'm more than happy to consider that and take that away. So I appreciate all the points you've raised, and I look forward to developing dialogue on that.
Thank you, Sean. Councillor Eastwood, and then I think Councillor Paul Davis wants to come in. So Councillor Eastwood.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thanks for the update of the report. On the point about air quality around our schools, we've seen, how should we put it? You know, it's getting like the Wild West outside at some of our schools at the moment. And it's just getting, how are we getting the message home to residents who are driving for the drop off and pick up that what they're doing is, it's long-term harm, and how can we get them to get there in an alternative way? Because we've seen or been sent photographs of some of the instances where kids are very looking up to be knocked over. It's just not safe to walk on the footpaths because cars are parking on the footpaths, they're blocking residents in. So it's just how we can enforce the message, get over the message to leave your car at home for the school drop off and things like that. The second thing would be that It mentioned about 6 of the air quality management areas failing the nitrogen dioxide test. So it'd be useful to know which 6 there were. I mean, I know we have one in the Linley ward at Ainley Top, and there just seem, for all the plans that are being made to improve the air quality there, we're just getting more and more planning applications, increasing the traffic that's going to be going into that roundabout. And I just wonder what credence the planners are really giving to air quality when just planning application after application is being crammed into one area. You can't help with the air quality, in my opinion.
Thank you, Councillor Eastwood. Sean, did you want to come back on that?
Yep, sure. So you mentioned air quality around schools and it being the Wild West. And how we increase those messages about anti-idling, not driving the kids to school. That would form part of our awareness and school engagement projects, which I'm eager to commence and start developing. I think having some form of signage or utilizing the new Zephyr monitors to have real-time results to say to a parent, you understand your idling or your parking here is contributing to increasing air quality. It may only be for morning and afternoon pickup, but in the long term, you're exposing children, etc. So I'm more than happy to have that school engagement, those anti-idling awareness type leaflets, and I understand as part of the wider COVID work, a vehicle is driving around to ascertain social distancing measures are being adhered to, and they are approaching or parents or who are parking in inappropriate locations. So that is ongoing. In terms of the AQMAs, 6 were initially identified to have exceeded, but then as part of ongoing DEFRA calculations, we reduce that to 5. The AQMAs were outlined in that table where they were bold and underlined. So 2 were within AQMA 5. There was 1 within Milnesbridge, and then another 2 within AQMA 8 and 9. I can't remember. I have to go back to my presentation. Sorry, but it is the AQMAs that were bold and underlined are the AQMAs which exceeded the air quality objective after distance correction and relevant adjustments. 4 of the 5 were within AQMAs, and the 5th was at Milnesbridge, which is the one that exceeded and is not within an air quality management area.
Okay. Is that all right, Richard? Yeah, perfect. All right, so I've got 4 hands up, and I think we're going to have to move on after that. So, Councillor Davis, did you want to come in now or after, once everyone's spoken?
I was going to suggest let other participants raise some questions. I'll come in at the end, and if that's okay.
Yeah, perfect. Andrew.
Myself. Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to reinforce the fact that although I regret the amount of commuting to schools that goes on and the idling of the cars and everything else, that parents are behaving entirely rationally based on their understanding of the situation. And it's not about enforcing things, it's about education and providing realistic alternatives. It links with the active travel link comment I made earlier on, but if people are trying to commute and move kids between 2 schools, for instance, as many families are, they have no realistic option but to use their own car as part of their commute at the start and the end of the day. So we need to change the way they can do that, and we need to provide education. We aren't going to stop. We can try and enforce things, but it's about getting them to understand rationally how they can behave differently. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. Sean, did you want to come back at all there?
Yeah, I take that point away, and I appreciate that. Obviously, the central government target of removing diesel and petrol vehicles will help encourage that that switch will enable parents to no longer drive those vehicles. And education, I wholly get that, and and that's part of that wider school engagement education project, which I'm more than happy to put forward. So yeah, thank you for that, and I accept that point.
Okay, thank you, Sean. I'm going to take Yusra and Ailey together. So if Yusra, do you want to come first, and then we'll have Ailey afterwards?
Yeah, sure. Just a couple of points that I really like Andrew's viewpoint in terms of education. But the specific points that I wanted to raise is we've focused quite a lot on cycling. And we need to consider things like walking. I know a lot of residents that walk their children to school if it's nearby, and they've been allocated places that are near to them. They do choose to walk. So I think we need to give our residents credit for that. Where it's not been possible, I think Andrew's sort of example highlighted that. In terms of public transport, the second point, I know many sort of public transport sort of services that are trying to move towards greener vehicles. So hybrid vehicles, self-charging vehicles, stop and start engines, and they're all self-employed individuals. So we have to be mindful that it is an expensive exercise for someone who's self-employed, but I also understand it's necessary. But we need to take them on that journey with us rather than force things on them. I've just reading in the chat about a third point that was raised about idling. I think most sort of transport services have tried to move their vehicles to stop and start engines and low emission engines, because when they're actually transporting their customers from one area to another, for example Leeds, there are charges that come on for certain vehicles. So a lot of businesses have tried to move towards purchasing more greener vehicles or more environmentally friendly vehicles. So idling, in terms of that, I don't know if it happens. I've not seen it, because most engines, sort of stop and start engines, and certain, I can't mention it on here, certain engines that will stop if they're on for a while to protect the environment. So I don't wholeheartedly agree with that written comment that's on the side. I think one question I'd like to know, or it would be interesting to know the stats around public transport and how many self-employed individuals have been able to move their vehicles to greener vehicles. And we need to try to find out about the people that aren't able to do that and why they're not able to do that. And I think the bigger picture here is economy as well, and the impact it will have financially on people. So I guess I really agree with Sean, and it's a really fantastic presentation. I just think we need to take people with us, and we need to do it in a staged way. So it's not putting people off, but it's allowing that change to happen in the right direction. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Yusra. I'll bring Ailey in now, and then we can scoop up all the comments. Just a reminder to members, we've got to make sure the stuff that we're saying in public, so try and avoid the chat for policy-based discussions, because we want to make sure everyone hears what you're saying. So Ailey.
Hi, so I'm afraid my video doesn't appear to be working anymore. Sorry about that. My point, just briefly, is around school buses. I think in the chat there's been some comments, and also people have made comments about cars idling outside schools, etc. I think there is mention around how the air quality works with transport strategies, but I think particularly around school buses, perhaps this needs a revisit. Perhaps looking at sort of mini buses and smaller forms of transport that are an improvement against private vehicles. I think I find it quite strange to have everyone driving their children to school rather than using buses, which might be a bit old-fashioned. And I think, yeah, should this be revisited? It might cost more or require investment, but perhaps that could be mitigated by savings from benefits elsewhere, including health benefits.
Thank you, Ailey. So I'll just bring in Councillor Davies first, and then we'll bring in Sean, if that's okay.
Yeah, just some general comments, really. I think, first of all, thanks, Sean. As other people have said, a really good presentation, brought the points over very clearly, and 5 weeks in, clearly making an impression already. So thanks very much. And it's really good to have somebody with a different accent, because, you know, with this Yorkshire accent I have, of course, it's so welcome. But I think, you know, Sean raised one point which we've not picked up in the presentation, which I think is crucially important, that air quality is where it should be now, right in the middle of the discussion of climate change. You know, the team that works on this as a whole is myself, Sean, Colin Parr, you know, John Atkinson, number of other people. So this is as a whole that we look at this, and I think very important going forward in terms of us then bringing together the right strategies and looking at the right actions and being able to drive delivery, because at the end of the day, this is all about delivery. So a number of points were raised, which I'm not going to address in total, and Sean will pick them up. But certainly, I think the issue of behavioural change is extremely important. I think that point that's been raised around schools is very much about behaviour change. Yeah, it's about trying to convince people to act in a different manner. I was having a conversation this morning about when my two daughters were young, you know, of neighbours driving their children to school when it was a 10-minute walk. So this is about changing that. And one of the things, Sean, certainly we could do is to work with governors within schools, because I think people forget the strong position governors hold, particularly in terms of influencing parents. So that could be an area as well. And I would certainly very much support us looking at how we could start going back to some of the ideas about travel plans for school and how we can bring those on board. I think that for me seems to me an absolutely vital approach that we need to look at. Of course, one of the big problems we've got, as we know, and this is probably slightly controversial, is around parental choice. You know, in the good old days, and actually Martin nodding his head because we're old enough, in the good old days, that wasn't the case. And if that was the current situation, it's obviously much more controllable. So it is really difficult. You know, that's very difficult in terms of us as an authority trying to look at buses, etc. But, you know, not completely insurmountable. So just to say, I can see already in the short time I've been in the role that the enthusiasm that Sean has and the way he's able to motivate people around him with regards to this area is going to pay real dividends. So thanks again, Sean. And I'll hand over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Davies, and thank you to everyone else who raised some valid points. So, looking at cycling focus and walking, yes, it's true that encouraging walking and recognising parents are making that choice. That's of course around public transport and companies have already switched to greener, hybrid, and those sorts of things. Yet, by all means, as part of that Highways England funding that unfortunately was pulled, it was a really exciting opportunity that would have enabled us to offer that try before you buy EV scheme to taxi drivers or to commercial fleet operators, and alongside that would be business advice on making the switch and how that could benefit them. Unfortunately, we will look at that again, and when Highways England offer that funding again, or if we find another alternative funding source, we will look to do that, because if it enables that change to happen, and we know that EV equivalents are expensive. Everyone knows that at the present. As the technology improves, and if we can offer these try before you buy schemes, which have been successful in other places, we will try to do that. There was a comment about buses and looking at school buses. I'm more than happy to take that away and add that to my list of engagement projects for engaging with bus companies and looking at that move towards Euro 6 or electric equivalents and just seeing how we can help them. But and by all means, I'm happy to take those points away. And there is also work around planning, and I think I missed a comment about planning, which we are promoting. All new developments must have EV charge points, so all new developments must have that, and that's a planning requirement. And we do look at mitigation as part of large-scale developments, and look at community infrastructure levy if a developer is not proactively implementing measures to improve air quality. I hope that covers most of the points, and I really do thank everyone. I will go back over this, and if I've missed anything, I will take it away, and I appreciate that. So thank you.
Thank you, Sean. That was really helpful. I think you've covered most of the points. Obviously, just a quick summary. We had the link between active travel and improvements to air quality. Looking at the charging points, so making sure that they're not just for taxi but other vehicles also, and adding the charging cable for cycling as well, electric bikes, air quality in schools, and obviously how we look at education rather than Sean's just telling us he's from Queensland rather than New South Wales. So that's what's making me giggle.
Well, that's what I said, Chair. At least he wasn't from New South Wales. Otherwise, we'd have had two people with Welsh connections.
We'd have had two Welsh connections. You're absolutely right. And obviously the importance of education and behaviour change. So we're not just forcing rules on. Just one other point in terms of the electric vehicles. The only thing I wanted to mention, we did get an email from a member of the public, and you have covered some of this already. So this was a while ago, but they were asking about how we're using incentives such as the try before you buy schemes for taxis and for private hire vehicles to encourage operators to change the clean vehicles. Now you've raised some of this in terms of the Health England, the funding, and hopefully, if that comes back, we would be wanting to look at that, is what you're saying as well, aren't you, Sean? So just wanted to obviously add in those viewpoints as well. Okay, well, thank you, Sean. We really appreciate it, and we look forward to working with you on an ongoing basis. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. So we're going to quickly move on to waste. We've got waste update, and we've got Will and Laura. So I'll pass on to both of you. And we've got another interesting accent with Laurie as well. So there you go.
Thank you, everyone. So we've got a short presentation, but I'm conscious of time, so we're going to really canter through it and give more time for questions. So Laurie, do you want to just bring up the presentation?
Can you see that?
Yeah, lovely.
The present button, is that better?
Yeah, so if you just move on to the next one, just for the agenda. So we're just going to cover off just some update on what the waste services during COVID, some of the impacts it's had, a quick summary of some of the recent resource and waste strategy engagement we've done, a quick overview of where we're in the waste disposal contract and the next steps. Next one, please, Laurie. So waste services during COVID. So obviously this was a big priority for everyone at home, producing more waste. We wanted to maintain our waste collection services and also our street cleansing services. And we did that. They were not without issue, but a number of our neighbours didn't manage it. A number of councils nationally didn't manage it, but we kept all of our waste collection services going. And we also grew our garden waste service from about 15,000 customers to approximately 25,000 customers during that period as well. So we're taking on additional work at the same time. Some of the things that we did was we increased the resilience of the workforce. So during February, as we started to see things starting to mount, and early March, we increased agency coverage by about 20 to 25 FTEs, which allowed us to ride out that initial wave and that initial shock. And then we were on the front foot moving forward. So some of the challenges, obviously, the social distancing is not something that's always possible within the waste collection cabs. We brought a number of control measures in, but what happens is if one member of the crew goes down, then all the crew isolates. So what you tend to see is we're seeing crews going down at a time. I'll go through some of the statistics in a minute, but what was interesting was we found it easier to manage the first wave than the second wave. and we've seen more crews go down in the second wave. We had 3 crews entirely off 2 weeks ago, for example. Everything's back and running now, but that's the sort of challenges we've been managing in the background, because once a crew goes down, that's the entire knowledge of that route gone. So we've got scratch crews coming in. So we have seen little flares up and mist bins now and again, because it's a crew that's not normally used to that area that's potentially doing it. So obviously, with more people working at home, one of the single biggest challenges we've had is parked vehicles. And some of this is turning into places, so vehicles need to swing out in order to get the turning circle to get into places, and we have a lot of backs in the south and up the valleys that have presented a real challenge for us. So that's caused some of the main issues on mist collections, which is steady, and we'll go through the graph in a minute. Household waste sites. So again, the household waste sites are the only thing that closed. That initially closed because the government didn't classify it as an essential travel. So we couldn't initially open them, but the minute that the government changed that guidance, we got them back up and running. And we had queue monitoring and management, but obviously there was significant demand with everyone being at home, everyone doing DIY. So we had to manage that daily, working with Suez, our partner, and I think we successfully brought the service back online and managed it through to normality. We're close to normality now. Bulky waste, obviously we're prioritising the bins during this period. So one of the things that did tend to give time-wise was bulkies. So sometimes bulkies took a bit longer, sometimes we got back on top of them, and that was where our flex was within the service. I think I've covered the others off. So on to the next one, please, Laurie. So I've covered off garden waste. So we're closer to 24 to 25,000 subscriptions now. It's been phenomenal. Obviously, people have been at home, a lot more gardening. Household waste sites closed for a while, and this was a phenomenal effort from everybody, from our IT department through to our communication department, web services, everybody, finance, just to take all of that and increase it, because obviously it's very important to our communities. They're at home, they're wanting to garden, they're wanting to get into it. So we wanted to keep that service and provide that service, and it's stabilised now, and it's really successful, I think. So household waste science centres, like I said, reopened as soon as the sort of national picture changed. There was a demand, but we did manage it. We had an online traffic management system. We had traffic management actually at each of the sites, just to educate people, say what we couldn't do, what we could do, because obviously with social distance managing on the sites themselves, things have been limited. Cardboard is the one that we've been concentrating on recently, and that was just got back live on the weekend. So we've worked with Suez, we've got a cardboard container, we thought it was important for Christmas, and so that's back up and running now. And slide coming, but I'll touch on some of the future things moving forward. Next one, please, Laurie. So we also delivered what we believe to be quite a number of improvements during COVID as well. So the ward squads, which we had launched just over about 18 months ago, we've actually increased the capacity there. So it used to be a timed service for councillors to be able to direct once or twice a year to undertake some work. We've now increased that resource, so councillors can call on that daily now. We've also realigned how we do our fly tipping. So some of the rightful frustrations people have had is, depending whose land it is, depending what sort of service you got, depending on the timeframes you had. So we've now moved the majority of council land into a single team for a single delivery. We also launched an online reporting tool, so we could increase not only the accuracy of what it is, capture of any evidence, but also you can now link into that and follow it. So we're removing replication and allowing people to say, well, I've seen that fly tip, I want to follow it now, I want to understand what happens to it. You can do that online and link into it and get updates, and that's a model that we're rolling out across a number of services. Street lighting was the next one, and then we've got potholes coming and so on and so on. So that's the sort of model that we're running on. In the back office, it's landing into one team now that also do the environmental enforcement and the collection. So we're not passing between teams and minimising the delays between actually someone reporting it and us collecting it. We also took an independent review of our health and safety. We've been linking in, we created a West Yorkshire Waste Forum to start with, pulling all the local authorities in to understand what's the best practice, what's happening, is legislation changing, is some of the control measures changing, to make sure we were on the front foot all the time with the control measures for our staff. Alongside that, we've also increased the resources dedicated to the cleansing service to make sure we keep that journey, and the action plan that's come out of the independent review we keep pushing through. We've had positive feedback, like I said, from everybody. We think there are some challenges. We do miss some bins which we wouldn't want to, but there generally are some reasons for it, as I've covered before, and we generally catch up pretty quick. Street cleansing, again, is something where we have invested in additional resources this year. We've recruited about 20 FTE more this year, which are going to be dedicated to looking at weed clearance, to improving some of the areas that were reduced previously, to sort of keep lifting that street scene. On to the next one, please, Laurie. So I thought it was worth sharing this information on performance. So again, if you look from March through to, and I think I took this cut about 3 weeks ago, we have averaged 99.72% of collections without complaint. And if you look at the graph on the bottom there, you can see that the two COVID waves actually directly correspond to the missed bin collection rates. So at the peak, our worst day was 327 missed collections there. And bearing in mind, we collect from tens of thousands of properties a day. So, in that period, we've collected from over 7.2 million bins, which I think is phenomenal given the pressures and where we've been in this global pandemic. If you want to go on to the next one, please, Laurie. So I'll pass across to Laurie now just to take us through a little bit of an update on where we are on the waste strategy engagement and sort of the next steps on that.
Okay, thanks, Will. So essentially, I'll go through a kind of an abridged version because I know we're quite short on time and we want to save a lot of time for questions. We essentially held a number of different webinars, which I think some members might have attended, and we've been doing a lot of party briefings. So I won't go through the detail because some of you will have heard this before. But essentially, we've got an engagement process lasting 6 weeks, and I think it was meant to end on Sunday, but we're just letting it eke on a few more days to see if we can get the last kind of stragglers of people filling in our survey. But essentially, we would like to, our aim is to publish a new Kirklees resources and waste strategy and adopt it in July next year. That's our aim. So before we put any plans together, and again, this is part of the doing with residents, getting their direct feedback, because it's the service delivery for them so that we can plan the right things that suit our different communities. So we've got, if you go on our website, which is that line in blue, you can have a look at our vision and our waste minimisation journeys and the proposed collection changes. I'll go through those in a minute, but the bit that I won't go through, just in the interest of time, is Virtual Street. Have a look at our website. There's a really interactive kind of hub that you can go through, and you can find kind of a community that looks like yours. So there's a section for semi-detached and detached properties. There's a section for tight terraces. There's a section for apartment blocks, and there's a section for difficult access properties where you can look at what the kind of changes might mean to you personally. So in the interest of, we're quite heartbroken that we can't go into our communities. We had quite extensive plans going into lots of our different events over the summer, going into our communities, going into our supermarkets, all that sort of thing. But COVID, unfortunately, has put some stoppers on a lot of that activity. So we're hoping the virtual street isn't the same, but it is at least something that allows residents to kind of place the changes in their mind and how it'll affect them in their community. The really key thing that we've really been pushing residents on social media and in any press releases we do is the online survey. If we can get as many people as possible completing that, then the better. I think the record at the moment is held by the Garden Waste Collection Survey, which was over 6,000 responses. We're not far off that. I think we're just about at 5,000 responses now, which is superb, but the more we can get back, the better. So if you get any chance to talk to your constituents, if you can get them to fill in that survey, either via social media or any means that you can via email, then we would really appreciate it. So that's just a little bit of a plug for me. So with regards to the first 3 bullets, I'll just go through those here. So Zero Waste Kirklees is kind of our tagline for the resources and waste strategy. And then our vision statement is just again, in line with our climate emergency and in line with the cycling strategy. So all the things that we were discussing earlier today, we want to have kind of an aim for a clean, green, sustainable future, which is one of our key priorities as a council. So wanting to move waste up the waste hierarchy, away from simple disposal, and really challenge our residents to think through the culture that they currently have with waste, the relationships they have. Buying a sandwich at Sainsbury's when you're really busy is absolutely fine, but when you're not busy, can you make it at home so you don't have that sandwich box that is a waste almost immediately? So all of those sorts of the educational side of things to push waste up the waste hierarchy to kind of avoidance, reuse or recycling. And we do that through these material journeys. So we've got the journey of a yogurt pot, and I won't again go into it in too much detail, but it goes through the actual life cycle of the yogurt pot, from the energy used from creation through to when it's eaten and no longer becomes a useful product, through to is there a recipe that you can find online to help you make your own yogurt at home with your own unique flavors, all that sort of thing. And just talking residents through what they can do instead of the current cultural habits that they have. Again, the food waste story is the same thing. What can you save on your food waste bill by taking a few minutes in advance of going to the supermarket to plan out what you're making in the week so that you're only buying exactly what you need and you're avoiding the impulse buys and you're avoiding the bog off offers. And then when you're making those selections, what products come locally so that you're minimizing that carbon footprint. And you're being just a much different outlook and change that we're wanting to have amongst our residents. And in many respects, that's down to the local authority to help with the educational side of things and to provide those opportunities and to be promoting it. So that's the sort of thing that we really want to push through with the new resources and waste strategy. So again, the details of those are on our website if you or any of your constituents would like to have a look. The key changes are to the collection system that we're proposing is essentially this purple bin will be the biggest difference on our street scene. What residents have been asking for quite a while is for things like pots, tubs and trays to go in the green bin. Now, there are some kind of carbon footprint climate change considerations when we make that decision. And that is really the key that we're wanting to get back from residents in the survey that we're asking. What is it? What's more important to you? To recycle because you have to use it because the way our society works, or is it more important to try and avoid using it in the first place and not send recycling thousands and thousands of miles to different countries to get it recycled? So there's that really difficult challenge that we need to make as a district. The really exciting one is glass recycling. I mean, we did have this service before, and I think a lot of residents are really happy to see that that's on the horizon. What they may not be as happy about is actually I don't have the space. I live on a tight terrace, or my front door opens up onto a pavement or a road. I don't have space for that purple bin, whichever color we decide. There's the alternative option of having a little caddy that sits in your green bin, or if you're on a sack collection, you could have a little box like we used to have that sits alongside your liners. So that's essentially the change of the options that would come. So the first phase would be plastics in the green bin. Second phase would be glass. Third phase is food. So that we're looking at introducing in time. Excuse me. Sorry about that. So sorry, Will, you might need to take over. I think. Oh wait, no, it's back. It's back. I think we're back. Yeah. So on the reuse shop, we're looking at around April next year, pending COVID. Sorry, do you want to go ahead, Will?
I'll take it over. Yeah. So we've got some things where we're looking at some quick wins as well, with the focus on reuse. So were it not for COVID, this would have launched already this year. We've been working, with Leeds City Council, a few years ahead of us on this, working with Revive. So we've got a trial that we're looking to bring into our own sites. We've agreed sort of heads of terms with Suez, with the payment mechanisms, etc. So we're quite well advanced with it. It's just pending COVID and when we're sort of comfortable allowing Revive people onto our sites to sort of start the education and diversion of reused materials. And they will be going into Revive's existing workshop network just to try and bring some of that social value back. And the idea is we get some of this information, some of this data, and then we can build that back into our waste strategy and build it and sort of bake it into our future changes to our household waste sites and to our disposal contract as well. Obviously, the contract ends. Then the nearest it ends is 2023. There is options for extensions in there, up to 5 years worth. So we do have a little bit of flexibility to make sure that our collection and disposal and procurement systems all align properly, and we may use some of that extension, we may not. We're just working through some of the detailed business case and getting our consultants on board who are due in January. So to come on board to sort of help build up that procurement program. We're undertaking condition surveys on the facilities. We've generally had these each year as part of the funding agreement with the PFI. As the funding's being paid now, we're going to step in as the authority and start having these annual condition surveys. The idea is that we continue to maintain and understand the condition of that facility and the life of it, so the energy from waste plant, the MRF, etc. So that we minimise the risk to any future contractor and maximise the life of that facility. We are also undertaking things such as land surveys of things like brick and tile, Emerald Street, to understand actually what maybe we want to build there, what's possible of building there. So we've got some intrusive surveys that we're planning. The contractors, in fact, we're meeting them tomorrow. So we're quite advanced on understanding what we can fit on that bit of land. So contract review. So what we've been working very closely with DEFRA and the various arms of DEFRA. So we've had them in. We've had them undertake what's called a contract review. They've brought an action plan and recommendations. Most of it was what we already had in sight, but it just helps in just bringing a bit of that external challenge and validation of what we're heading into, from governance, from have we got the right technical people in, have we got the right specification we're going out with. And so that's been really helpful. And so we started implementing that action plan alongside our own preparations. We're also working with DEFRA because not many people have exited a PFI. And so DEFRA are keen to learn and bring on board what we do and how we do it to make sure that any future changes are communicated out to other councils. And so we've also had something called an IPA review, which was 3 or 4 hour sessions with PwC, with DEFRA, with various people to sort of interview us, take us through their own process as well. And there should be a report coming out that will be sort of internal to the council to, again, any learning we'll bring from that we'll take on board in the procurement. Next slide, if you're still there, Laurie. So next steps, obviously we're looking to collate everything that we've done and all the engagement, understand what it's telling us, understand if there's a preference by community, by type of property, or is everyone happy with the same solution, and just really understand the next, what's the action plan for starting to bring some of this in. We'll build up the business case. This is where we'll bring together the collection and the disposal, ideally to go to full council in spring and summer next year. We're probably looking close to summer, really to just say this is our new resource and waste strategy, and that will then be the springboard for everything, for the changes to collection to be planned in and the changes to disposal and procurement to be planned in. I think that's the last slide, Laurie, isn't it?
It is, yes, and I'm back. I'm really sorry about that.
All right.
A little tickle. It's just ages to get rid of. I apologise.
Everyone was worried about you then. So
I know,
no, I'm fine.
What happened. So as long as you're all right, Laurie, that's all we care about.
I'm absolutely fine. Yes, thank you.
Oh, great.
So do you want to take them down, Laurie, and then we can?
Yeah, of course.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Will and Laurie. And I think obviously we'd all want to say thank you to the whole team for being able to carry on with the work. I know a lot of local authorities have had to change their services, particularly in bin collections, and Kirklees has generally been able to, well, they have upheld their existing service. So, you know, really want to congratulate the the refuse collectors and the whole team for what they've done, really. So members, I think we've already got some hands up. Oh, the hand has gone. Members, does anyone want to ask a question? Oh, we've got one here. Councillor Eastwood.
Thank you. I'll keep this brief because I know it comes to time. Very positive. I applaud you and your team. I think to have a collection rate of 99.72% is absolutely fantastic. I know it can't be 100%. There's always things that do crop up. What I'd like to know is to maintain that level of 99%. So what level of outsourcing has that to be done, taken into account? Because obviously you've had staff off with illness and whatever else. Obviously you've had changes with the rounds. Regarding the recycling, I think education. It's got to be clear and concise so people understand exactly what can be recycled. I think it's fantastic that we're getting the glass collections back. It's been a bugbear of ours for quite a while, as that, and also the food caddy is a good idea. So yeah, very positive. Well done. Thank you.
That's great. Can I just say something on education? I think, you know, you're absolutely right. There, we've put a lot. What we've been doing in Kirklees over the last however many years, as long as I've been here, which is 5 years, we have been doing lots of education, but it's been targeted. So it's been, if you don't understand what goes in your green bin or you're putting the wrong things in, we can come and visit your property and talk you through it. All of that is fantastic. But what we've been missing is the very overarching kind of cultural change side of education, which we're really keen and excited to start to get in amongst our communities to develop that. So thank you. I'm glad you're pleased with it.
And I can step in just on the outsourcing. We haven't outsourced anything. We brought an additional agency and capacity into the existing teams, which, you know, there is a slight overspend on the service, but it's in the region of £300,000 or £400,000 for the year, because some of that has been offset by the income from the garden waste. So we have really benefited, and I think if anybody at the beginning of this would have said we'd have maintained that level of complaints and only overspent in that region, they'd have thought we were mad. So I think we've done phenomenally, and it's, you know, we'll pass on, make sure we pass on that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Eastwood, did you want to come back, or was?
Yeah, sorry, I missed the point. It was regarding the bulky waste and obviously some of the delays that we've been experiencing there. I think the biggest criticism that we've encountered is people not being kept into the loop as to just why it's taken as long as it is doing. All they say is, well, they take our money straight away, but then we're waiting 8-10 weeks, whatever. So it's keeping people in the loop of where they are along the line.
Yeah, I think you're right. One of the things we have on the shelf, and again, we would have launched when not for COVID, is we've got a booking system that's ready and nearly fully developed. So the idea was through this year we would have launched the booking system, had dedicated resources for bulky waste, because the next step after that is then bringing in a reuse partner to try and divert some of the reusable elements away from it. So hopefully next year we'll be able to launch the booking system. It'll give much more certainty that when I pay my money, I know I've got a slot, I know when it's going to get collected, and it should only be exceptional that it isn't. And the other bit that I missed off was actually on the back of education, we did secure funding from RAP to launch a schools recycling service. So again, we're working with schools. They want it to launch about September next year for obvious reasons, but we're building up and we're planning for that as well. And we've secured about £135,000 from RAP to fund the vehicle, and then we'll get it up and running. And again, it's about living that change as well for schools. So if we're going in to educate, then we're going to try and get the hearts and minds of children to have that recycling service outside as well. Just I think will really help.
Yeah, that's good, very good point. Nahid?
Yes. Can I join the chair and panel members in saying how I am so proud of the service. Despite COVID difficulties, this is a service that's that everyone receives, that I was delighted to share the service, to share how and what they've been doing during this extenuating circumstances, and as Will said, a phenomenal rate of collection making sure the services are kicking along, not using what was it, Councillor Eastwood said, contracting out. It's all inside, in-house, aligning services so that it's a holistic look. And can I push, like Laurie, can I push our survey, waste strategy engagement? Can you please complete the survey, ask your constituents to do the same, so that we can actually come away next year to actually producing a strategy which our residents have been part of. And all I can say is well done to all the staff in collection and waste. You have gone above and beyond. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Naheed. I've only got Councillor Paul Davis with his hand up, so I'll take that and then we'll move on unless something urgent comes up. Okay, Paul?
Yep, thanks. Really, again, to add my congratulations to the team. I think, it's been fantastic. These are frontline workers who've been out there in the most difficult of circumstances, and pretty scary circumstances out there, so huge credit to them. And the way they've done it is with, as usual, with good humour and a friendly approach as well, and I think that that has to be remembered as well about the service and the way it's provided. I think something that you picked up or you mentioned briefly was around the reuse element of the waste strategy. For me, this is just crucial. Again, going forward, this whole idea of a circular economy and us looking at how we now start to reuse, fix all sorts of items, it will have a massive impact, as we know, in terms of climate change, in terms of waste overall. And I know, Laurie, you've talked about the hierarchy, of waste, and I think we have to get people to some extent away from the idea that just recycling is going to solve this. We have to start changing behaviours to reduce that waste as well. So it's a combination of things. But I think, I'm really, really excited by the ideas you've put forward. I'm also really pleased at the response you're getting on the survey, and just looking forward to discussing this, obviously, at Cabinet or Council, and ticking the box so that we can get on with it. So thanks, guys. Fantastic. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Paul. So just to summarise, there's been very positive comments about the team and the operations that have continued. You answered questions around outsourcing. I think the other points that were made were that we must continue with education and also try and be as clear and concise as we move to different collections. So that's going to be important. And then also just trying to communicate change as much as possible. So I think Councillor Eastwood mentioned bulky waste, which you'd taken on board as well. So thank you for that. Just one other point, we did have a resident contact us in the summer. They mentioned that there'd been a programme at the university last December looking at zero waste and looking at how we can reduce waste minimisation and reuse services in Kirklees. You're obviously are working on that agenda, but there's obviously quite a few keen residents out there that really want to see us move as much as possible. So that's good to know, and perhaps we can try and link up with these groups as well to make sure we're working together. And you've obviously you are doing that through the consultation. I think the point, Laurie, that you made about making sure that our waste doesn't just end up somewhere else is something that is important to me. I know you're obviously going to be going through the consultation, but the idea that perhaps the things that we don't want to recycle ends up in a different country, so we're just passing it on somewhere else. I think obviously we've got to move away from that, and we've seen that in your presentation as well. But just wanted to make that personal point. But thank you very much to both of you, and thanks for joining us as well. And please pass on our thanks to colleagues as well. Okay, so members, I just want to quickly move on to the work programme. which is in your papers. Is there anything that members want to add at this stage? No, I don't think anyone wants to say anything right now. I can't see any hands up, and I can't see Martin.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. We exchanged a couple of emails about scrutiny looking at major highway schemes, because obviously scrutinising before decisions and things like that is something which we were set up to do, and also to contribute to Cabinet as the critical friend approach. So I think it'd be useful looking at strategic transport issues.
Yes, that's fine. Martin, sorry, my mind's going. My mind is really going. Sorry, Martin. Yeah, I think that's fine. I'd be happy to put the major sort of highway transport schemes as an item on a future panel. What we'll need to do is just go through the calendar and fit it in. But yeah, I absolutely agree. The only other points I wanted to make was that the recent release of the business grants, it was exempt from calling. So because obviously we wanted to make sure that the council and administration wanted to make sure that the grants were processed quickly. That was discussed with Councillor Smage, and she suggested that it should go on the Economy and Neighbourhood Scrutiny panel, the next one. So we're hoping to have that in the January item as well. So the other bits are all in the programme. So there's nothing else that members want to add at this stage. Okay, you can obviously contact us at any point, and we can make sure that's any items that you're interested in can be considered for the work programme as well. Martin, did you want to come in?
No,
that's it. Okay, well, I want to thank everybody really. You've got your hand up, Martin. Is there? No?
Oh, too much technology.
Too much technology. Okay. Well, I just wanted to finally say that it's certainly been an interesting year for us as panel members, and I want to thank everyone for adapting really to the way we do things. Obviously, at the start of the year, we probably wouldn't have guessed that we'd be in this position come December. So thank you everybody for everything that you've done and for your contributions. Just want to say a big thank you to our IT teams really that have made it possible for us to continue carrying out this work. And also I want to thank our governance officer Lee Webb, who's going to be leaving the local authority soon. So a big thanks to him. He's moving on to Greater Manchester. We'll let him off that he's going across the border. But a big thanks to him for everything that he's done to support us over the year. And Councillor Eastwood, did you want to say something? No, you're just buzzing. You're highlighting. Okay then. Have a great Christmas and Happy New Year, and we'll see you again in late January. Well, thank you, members.
Thanks, Alfred. All the best, everybody. Cheers.
Thank you.